I love to fly, right? So I want to take you back to the last time where you flew. I don't know what airline it was. Maybe you're cheap like me and it was Ryanair. You just remember you're flying Ryanair, or maybe you're quite fancy and you're flying Aer Lingus. Oh, you guys are so fancy with all the money, right? You're like, no, I don't fly Ryanair, I'm going to fly Aer Lingus. But anyway, the last time you were flying, they always have these safety demonstration, right, at the start of the flight. So tell the truth and shame the devil. Do you listen to what the flight attendants are saying? No, right? No, I have been in many flights and no one's listening. People are listening to their iPods, iPads. People are watching, their movies. People are reading their books and newspapers. Nobody is watching. And I'm kind of one of those rare people who actually watches. So I stand there, and it's just me and them and nobody else. And I am just watching them, and I'm thinking to myself, this is such a waste. It's a waste for them. It's a waste for me, because nobody is listening. Nobody is watching. But yet we continue with these charades of just continuing with it when it's just a waste, and nobody is bothered by it. And as human beings, we've got accustomed to wastage and not be bothered by it. Let me prove it to you. Some of you have subscriptions that have been going on for years and years. Maybe subscription to the gym, or maybe subscription to some streaming services, but you never use them. But you keep doing it. Some of you throw away perfectly good food. You go grocery shopping, you buy things, put them in the fridge, never use them, come back a month later, oh, I didn't use that. You throw it away, you go back out and you do it. It's just such a waste. Or if you're a bookworm, like I like to read books, you should see my bedroom. It is full of books. And don't think I'm wise or anything. I have not read them. I have not read them. And anytime my family and I go out, guess where I am? I'm at Eason's. What am I doing? I am buying more books that I am not reading. It is just such a waste. But it doesn't seem to bother me. I keep buying books. Like, we just waste things. We just waste things, and it's all right. But let me ask you this. Is it all right if we are wasting our marriages? Is it all right if we're wasting golden opportunities that God gives us? Is it okay if we are wasting our lives? Have you ever thought of the concept of wasting your life? I'm going to tell you about a book. I'm going to tell you about a book. This book rocked my world. It's a book called Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper. Like, he's a Christian theologian. Don't waste your life. And I'm telling you, this book, it transformed the way I live my life. Like, I bumped into that book about maybe 15 years ago. And in that book, he tells this story of a man, an elderly man at this point, who was so resistant to Jesus. He didn't come to church for anything, and people were trying to get him to church, but he wouldn't come. But there's this one church that would pray for this man for decades and decades and decades, but he never came. He was resistant to the gospel. Then one day, as an elderly man, unannounced, he walks into church, and he listens to the pastor as the pastor preached, and everybody is just amazed. This is the man we've been praying for decades, and he's here. And actually, to the amazement of everyone, when the sermon finished, he walked up to the pastor and he said, "Pastor, I want to accept Jesus in my life." And he accepted Jesus. I mean, cue the celebration. Everybody is happy. This is what happens when people come to Jesus. People are excited. But as people are celebrating, this man in that moment just starts to sob. He starts to sob uncontrollably. And he just starts uttering these words. "I have wasted it. I have wasted it. I have wasted it. And he began to cry. And that story has stuck with me, and it just lit a fire in my heart that I do not want to waste my life. It put a holy fear in my life, because not all fears are bad. Some fears are good. For instance, a fear of drugs is a good fear. You should fear that stuff. It put a fear in my heart that I do not want to waste my life. I do not want to reach my deathbed and be filled with regrets that I have wasted my life. And then I'm going to ask you this question. Are you wasting your life? Are you wasting your life right now? How would you answer that question? Are you wasting your life? And in the sermon today, we're going to try and unpack that vital question of, are you wasting your life? How do you know whether or not you're wasting your life? So today we're going to go to Paul, and Paul is going to unpack for that what an unwasted life looks like. So we're going to go to verse 19. So in verse 19, so before I read, let me just give you a little bit of context. So there's this man, the Apostle Paul. He's been put in prison because he is preaching the message of Jesus Christ. So then he is put in prison. And you think about it. To many people in and around him, that's a waste. That is a waste. You're in prison, Paul. That is the epitome of wasting your life. You are in prison. But Paul says, no. It's different. So this is where we get verse 19 and 20. And let me just, this verse are a bit dense, but I'm going to try and unpack them for us. So in verse 19 it says, for I know that through your prayers, that God's provision of the Spirit, so that the Philippian church is praying for him. So through your prayers, God has supplied the Holy Spirit. And what has happened to me, so think about what has happened to Paul. He's been put in prison. And at this moment, as he writes this, he's awaiting trial. And trial is about to begin. And it's either going to be release from prison or execution. It's either going to be life or it's going to be death. But he goes, what has happened to me has actually turned out for my deliverance. What? What's he smoking? He's saying actually going in prison has turned out for my deliverance. It's actually, in other words, it's actually turned out, it's going to vindicate me. It's actually going to prove me right. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then in verse 20 he goes, I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now as always Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or death. So what he's saying is kind of nonsensical, right? He's saying by being chained in prison and awaiting release or death, that through all that, my ministry, Paul, is going to be proved right. That's what he means by deliverance. I'm going to be delivered. I'm going to be vindicated. I'm going to be proved right. I'm like, what does it mean? So I was like, those verses are just so hard to unpack. And as I was looking at it, I was like, how am I going to try and explain them? Because he actually quotes Job from the Old Testament, who uses the same words. He says, what has happened to me is going to turn out for my deliverance, when his friends are accusing him of having done something wrong. So the Apostle Paul does something similar. So I'm going to try and explain it by what happened yesterday. So yesterday, what happened yesterday, guys? Go away, right? So go away won, and it was so amazing, right? But now I want you to take you into the camp of the Dublin guys. They're the losers, right? They lose. We blew them out by like 14 points. But I'm going to take you to the Dublin camp. So imagine the bosses of the Dublin camp, they bring the coach, and they say, we lost because of your tactics. And because of that, we're going to have to really think about whether we're going to keep you or whether we're going to fire you. This is the scenario for the Dublin coach. We are thinking whether we're going to keep you or fire you. So imagine the boss, the Dublin coach, holds a press conference and he goes, I know we lost, but whether they fire me or not fire me, what has happened, which is the loss, has actually proved my tactics right. Right? You'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, we lost because of your tactics, but you're saying what has happened to me is going to prove my tactics. So essentially, this is what the Apostle Paul is saying. His tactics have got him in prison. His approach, his strategy has got him in prison. And now he's doing this speech and he says, actually, the fact that I'm in prison actually proves that my tactics are right. Do you see what I say when I say, what is he smoking? Like, what is he smoking? But Paul, so let me explain what Paul, like how come Paul is saying this? Like, how come, let's try and get into his strategy. And this is now where you start to get what Paul's strategy is. So, for Paul, let's kind of play out the scenario. He goes to court and is released. Right? So listen in verse 21. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain, right? Okay, so let's play the scenario out. So let's say he lives. That one is an easy scenario, right? He's released and he goes on to preach Jesus. That makes sense, right? That makes sense. But the scenario that doesn't quite make sense is the one where he is killed. So where he's killed in prison, he's saying this is gain. So why is this gain? So there are two ways in which it is gain. And he's going to unpack it as well. So in verse 22, if I'm going on living in the body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. Right? So he's going to continue preaching. Yet which I shall choose, I do not know. I am torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. So here's the thing, the scenario, right? So free means he will preach the gospel, right? But death, what does death mean? Death means he will be with Jesus. Remember, to depart this is to be with Jesus. But I don't see how that serves the gospel. So this is like now where it's implied from the whole letter. So if you think about it, Paul being in prison is actually embodied other Christians to preach the gospel. So what's happened throughout history is when people are actually killed, and let's use Rome in this example. When people were killed for the gospel, were they thrown in the Colosseum, and they were fed to the lions. When this happened, it actually emboldened other people to preach the gospel. And it actually won so many people towards Christianity. Because people would look at them and say, if they are willing to be thrown in the Colosseums with the gladiators, with the lions, and not deny Jesus, this thing must be true. You know, and if you look at church history, it's actually said that the seed of the church is the blood of martyrs. The seed of the church is the blood of martyrs. As people are actually killed for the gospel, it actually gives the gospel validity. And I know for us, sometimes thinking of this, it's a little bit foreign depending on where we are. But just like two days ago, I got a newsletter from an organization called Church in Chains. And it said 31 Christians have been arrested in China. So 31 Christians have been arrested in China. And what's their charge? Coming to church. What you're doing this morning has got them arrested. And they were given between 2 years and 4 years. And the oldest person there was 77 years old. 77 years old, they are put in prison. So I just want to say for that is, don't take for granted what we're doing right now, meeting together in freedom without physical persecution. And then the second one is, please do pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters in their different countries. Pray for them. And what you should pray for them more than they release is pray for them that they will have this attitude of Paul, that come what may, they will not deny the gospel. Because you see, if they deny the gospel, they will be shamed, right? They will be ashamed. There will be a fraud. There will be a disgrace. But if they hold on, they will be with Jesus. But now I want to talk about the strategy. So what strategy is Paul sort of defending, right? What strategy? So the strategy, we actually see it in verse 24. So in verse 24 it says this. Remember, let me just give you a little context again. Paul is contemplating whether to live or whether to die, which is far better. So he actually goes, I think kind of dying is better here because the prison conditions are not the best. Dying will be the best. I know that might sound old, but we kind of say the same thing. You know, like when you have a loved one who suffered for so long and you've seen them suffer, and when they pass away, people say expressions like, at least they're in a good place, or the suffering has stopped, right? That's that idea. So Paul is going between the two. Kind of dying is good because it gets him to Christ and stops the suffering. But don't stop there. In verse 24, then he goes, but it is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. So this is powerful. Think about it. So although his desire might be to die and be with Christ, he says, I will choose life for you. For your sake, I will choose life. So I want to say to you this. An unwasted life, it is a life that is lived in sacrifice for Jesus and others. Let me say that. An unwasted life is a life that is lived in sacrifice for Jesus and others. So I want to say this. I want to say it because it's a sensitive subject, and I want to say it as delicately as I can. If you struggle with suicidal thoughts, if you struggle with negative thoughts, negative tendencies, self-harm, I want to say to you, you don't live for you. You live for others. Your living is not for you. It is for others. So even if you cannot see any reason on this earth that you should live for you, you should live for others. And maybe there are no others in your life right now that can say, I want to live for them. Let me say to you, there is somebody in your future. There is somebody not yet even born that you're going to touch with your life. So you live for them. You sacrifice for them. That is the unwasted life. And here's the thing. Here's the irony of it. It's a joy to sacrifice. Yes, it is hard, but it is a joy. I admire mothers. I admire mothers. Think about it. They carry a child for 9 months, bring this child into this world in pain, excruciating pain, go through years of sleep deprivation, and hear this, sacrifice their desires. Let's be 100%. It is a lot of women who will stop their careers for their children. And if you ask them again, will they do it? They will. Because it is a joy. It is a joy to sacrifice for their children. That is an unwasted life. We should live lives where we sacrifice for other people. I'm going to embarrass the band here, but hear me out. Just last week on Thursday, my wife comes home very late, and we're home, we're just having fun, and I'm looking at the clock. I was like, how long is this practice of yours? She's like, it's 2 hours, and sometimes people stay afterwards. I'm like, you guys are meeting for more than 2 hours every week, and that's not counting the commute. But they're doing it every time. But guess why they're doing it? They're doing it for others. And they love it because it is a joy to sacrifice for others. That is what an unwasted life is. And when they're doing that, they're just following the example of Jesus. In Philippians chapter 2, our ultimate example of sacrifice, it says, Jesus, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in the appearance of a man, he humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Now that is an unwasted life. That is a life I want to emulate. Let me ask you this question. Of all the people in your life, there could be people in your life right now, or people from history. Who are the people you admire the most? Just take a minute to think about it. Like in my mind, my mom comes to my mind right now. Like, who are the people you admire the most? I will tell you what is common amongst those people. It is people who have sacrificed. It is people who have given their lives even to a cause. It's people like Nelson Mandela. People who were put in prison for a cause they sacrificed. It's people like Martin Luther King Jr. People who have sacrificed. It's people like Corrie ten Boom. It's people who have sacrificed because it is joy to sacrifice for Jesus and others. It is people like your mom, your dad. It is people who have sacrificed. So I've got these 2 questions to ask of you. This week, I'm not talking next week, I'm talking this week. Who will you sacrifice for? So who? Have a person in mind. Who will you sacrifice for? And what would you sacrifice for them? So if you're young, maybe you're sacrificing the TV so your siblings could watch something. So you're sacrificing playing your game so that your siblings can enjoy themselves. If you are married, maybe you are sacrificing watching the hurling game so you can take your wife for a date. If you're a friend, maybe you're sacrificing sleeping in so you will go to a friend who is in need. Who and what are you sacrificing? And I guarantee you, if you do that, you are living an unwasted life. If you come to my house, I have this portrait. It's been in my house since my kids were young. And it says, only one life, don't waste it. It will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will really last. Only one life, don't waste it. It will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will really last. It is a message that I want etched on your heart, so that when you get to the end of your life, you will not sob saying, I have wasted it, but rather you will rejoice. And when you get to heaven, you will hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. You have not wasted it. So do not waste your life, I beg of you.